Hello and welcome. War. Why does it happen? Well, usually one side doesn't like the other side, so they decide to remove that other side. And in the glorious game of Total Warhammer 3, it is not that different. Or is it? What if your actual reason for attacking this other side is not to simply wipe them from the face of the earth, but instead to forcefully provide them with economic assistance? Introducing the Deceivers, a faction of Singed led by this floating blue Malaka known as the Changeling. This bastard is the last standing member of the Shadow Wizard Money Gang, as well as a professional spy master, capable of integrating secret cult hideouts inside both friendly and enemy settlements alike. These hideouts can for some reason control the entire economy of the infiltrated settlements while still remaining completely hidden. Now, the Changeling is not only a master of economics, but also a military genius, so of course these cults also serve as the Deceivers' primary way of military recruitment. Steroid-infused flamethrowers, gigantic tentacle monsters, and most importantly a weaponized version of dissociative identity disorder are just some of the things that will be used today to fulfill our dreams of becoming a successful evil mastermind. Step 1. Scheming. There truly is no better way to demonstrate your evil mastermindness than by conducting devious schemes. Why not break into the Empire capital in order to steal a war tank, or perhaps permanently delete your distant cousins in order to accumulate their advanced healing technology? Well, inside the conveniently named Scheme tab, there are a shit ton of these goddamn schemes scattered around the different continents of the game. But because we are edgy, we instead call them theaters of war. For example, the jungles of the Lizard World, the Empire, and of course, Français. However, the campaign begins in the heart of the Empire, surrounded by potential targets, such as the Short Kings, vampires, and the worst one of them all, Homo sapiens. Fortunately, I was already at war with an Empire faction, and so, after taking a good look at my beautiful units, I decided to attack the closest Empire settlement with only one goal in mind: to test the effectiveness of hitting humans with magically imbued fire, which turned out to be very effective, and after turning the defending garrison into a not so much defending garrison, I decided to place a symbiotic cult inside the settlement. You see, to become a member of the Shadow Wizard Money Gang, the Changeling had to pass Infinite Money Glitch 101. This ancient technique is what enables these symbiotic cults to ignore everything you think you know about economics. This magical construction in particular boosted the town's cash flow by 10%, gave me 50% of the profits, and still managed to provide the settlement owners with their full share of the income. Yeah, that shit doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but hey, I'm not complaining. But do you know what does make sense? Well, if you said World of Tanks, which just so happened to be today's video sponsor, then you're absolutely right. World of Tanks is an awesome free-to-play PvP shooter available on PC, and as the name suggests, the game is entirely based around intense tank versus tank combat. With over 800 customizable tanks separated into 6 distinct classes, you can truly create your own way to play the game. Maybe the long-range artillery tank, capable of sniping your enemies from afar, is exactly what you're looking for. But perhaps you would like to be even more in your opponent's face with the beefier heavy tank, made to soak up incoming fire while still being able to deal a lot of damage by itself. However, since the game currently has 100 million registered players, and not to mention 40 unique maps to play on, there will definitely be times when some tactics work better than others. And that's actually my favorite thing about World of Tanks, simply because it adds variety to every game played, while also favoring well thought out tactics. Download World of Tanks right now using my link in the description or pinned comment down below, and by using the code COMBAT, that's COMBAT, you as a new player will receive the medium tank Cromwell B along with 3 rental tanks available for 10 battles each. Last but not least, you will also receive 250,000 credits and 7 days of premium account status. Now, if you already have a World of Tanks account, but you haven't played for at least 30 days, you can still use the code to get 3 days of premium account status, but also a 7-day 10 battle rental of the Centurion Mk 5/1, manned by a crew trained to 100%. But if you already own this tank, you will be compensated with 100,000 credits. Lastly, you will also get the Camouflage 2D style bargain. Thanks World of Tanks for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to our boy the Changeling. Since the Empire settlement was now unofficially just my settlement, I had officially completed my first scheme, and for my troubles, I received vision over the entire Empire theater as well as a cultist named Gunther Pritzkock. From the outside, this might look like your everyday Malaka, but on the inside lies the ingenuity of a seasoned special ops engineer. This sneaky bastard has the ability to construct specialized military recruitment bases inside any city of my choice. How? I don't know, but after telling him to construct a military trickster cult inside my enemy's capital, he went over there and instantly spawned multiple tier 3 buildings, allowing me to recruit way stronger units than you should ever be able to recruit on turn 1. Shocked by this totally balanced game feature, I decided to get myself 3 units of flamers, as well as 1 unit of British from the local mercenaries. I of course really wanted to see what these bad boys could do, and I also wanted to try out the changeling's so-called shape-shifting abilities. Now, what if there just happened to be a rogue army of test volunteers just right next to me? By having the changeling portray this weak-looking hooded form, I managed to lure these newfound volunteers to follow this supposedly easy prey. But as soon as they were close enough, the once easy prey instantly turned into an 8-meter purple kink monster demon. And together with these things, well, let's just say that I now have a much greater understanding of why he is called a trickster. After this test, I felt strong enough to once again indulge in some more scheming. But for this time, I wanted to do something with a bit more oomph. And so, after inspecting the other schemes available in the Empire region, I made the decision to visit Sylvania. But this wasn't just any kind of visitation, because my main objective was to corrupt the Sylvanian capital and homestead of Vlad von Karstein, seeing as this would create an arcane teleporter capable of taking me wherever I wanted. But before I could attack the capital, I first had to fix my economy, because apparently it is very expensive to host this kind of army on turn 3. So, I ransacked a couple of nearby settlements to try and fix this not-so-positive red number. However, when your army is filled with an insane amount of blue versions of Ghost Rider, it is kinda hard to focus on your economic longevity. And even after infiltrating both the Moot and Fort Oberschreier, the whole money situation still wasn't looking so good. But then, a God-sent opportunity represented itself. Vlad von Karstein had taken Fort Oberschreier from the previous vampire owners, leaving himself vulnerable to be assassinated by moi. But for some reason, the auto-resolve believed that this would leave me with a valiant defeat. Well, the auto-resolve obviously doesn't know that I am an unparalleled military prodigy. The battle began with me sending in my flying units to remove all aerial competition, but also to take advantage of the slow-moving corpse pile that is the Empire roster. The strategy worked great, and soon both the bat units as well as the bigger bat units were very much more dead than they were in the beginning. After I had obtained full control of the skies, I could then freely rain down hellfire on even more of their ground troops. And if the enemy units still managed to reach my front line somehow, they were then met with even more fire. And considering the fact that the changeling can turn into any legendary lord he defeats in battle, I could now have him transform into Vlad von Karstein, as well as his beautiful wife. Some turns later, I had regrouped near the Sylvanian western border, and my economic depression was no more. I was now very close to my target, Castle Drakenhof, but I was also very close to the newly awakened Vlad. Luckily, he could not see me. To put it simply, me being inside region with cult inside settlement make me go invisible. You get it? Don't ask why. Either way, the problem was still there. Even though Vlad could not technically see me, there was still a very big chance that he would go back to Castle Drakenhof on the next turn. To make sure this did not happen, I told my friend Jos Stiltman from the national nose-breathing team to stand outside the village that Vlad was in and threaten to steal all of his oxygen. Jos unfortunately passed away that day, but at least he kept Vlad from coming back to his castle. This, however, meant that it was now my time to break in to the motherfucking castle. Valiant defeat. What the fuck? Valiant defeat my ass. This battle was one of the easiest things I've ever done. I chose to use the broken strategy of sending all of my units into the enemy's front door. And since the enemy all collectively share one brain cell, they countered this strategy by sending all of their units to defend their front door. Yeah. With a symbiotic cult now inside Castle Drakenhof, all that remained was for me to wait until the corruption meter had reached 75. Oh shit, hold on. Instant teleportation had been achieved. I could now travel to nowhere. Well, not yet anyways, but after consulting my research tree and choosing the key to the west, it was decided. Gentlemen, we were going to France. Upon entering this godforsaken land of evil, I immediately declared war on the locals, and after clearing out the nearest enemy settlement, the changeling reached level 12, which made him unlock some very nice abilities. After this, I noticed that the leader of the southern French nation was standing right there, and there was also another French army standing right over there. Any ordinary individual might look at this and say, fuck, but I am no ordinary individual. So, I employed a tactic first taught to me when I was still in kindergarten. If you want someone to stop being mean, just say stop. And lo and behold, it fucking worked. After telling this fey lady to not move and just stand there, she indeed didn't move and just stood there. And the next turn, I walked up to her army with the intentions to be the only one who walked away from our encounter. For this battle, it was critical to focus on the French artillery as it utilized the newest active radar homing technology, which meant that these motherfucking boulders would track my units and change direction mid-air to follow them. The enemy also had access to flying cavalry, or more like one guy on top of a flying horse, but since he was completely alone up there, I simply went up to him and kicked him off his flying horse, and now he was no longer flying. The French units became so overwhelmed by my insane tactics that they all just stood there staring up into the sky. But this sky gazing only lasted for so long. Finally, the French had enough of my bullying, so they sent their ground units, or what was left of them, straight into the effective range of my bug extermination force. With Fady Enchantress now being one with the ground, I gladly accepted her defeat rate of 10% more healing to my army. And by taking out that other settlement from before, I had also completed the first scheme in the French region. Very nice. The ski mechanic offers a really satisfying progression system to keep your neurons properly engaged. After completing a set number of basic schemes in a specific theater, you can then proceed to fight that theater's grand scheme battle. And after completing a minimum requirement of 5 of these grand scheme battles, you can then try to complete the ultimate scheme. And since I had already completed one basic scheme in the French region, I only needed to complete 2 more. Now, it just so happened that there were 2 very interesting schemes available. The first one being a pretty discreet assassination request on the tree-loving Malaka himself, Mr. Ryan, and the second one being a not-so-discreet request to burn down the entire forest of Athaloran. With these 2 new objectives in mind, I sent my army towards the magical forest, making sure that there was a parasitic cult inside every French settlement on the way. Within all of these settlements, I then constructed a building that I like to call Fuck Your Economy building. And as you can understand, having multiple of these all over your territory is not very good for your financial situation. Speaking of financial situations, it was at this point that I noticed the fact that my income had tripled in the matter of a few turns. The main factor actually came from inside Castle Drakenhof. And this number was only going to get even higher considering the fact that I was upgrading the building responsible for all of this. The Shrouded Financier increased the effectiveness from all local buildings by 25%, as well as giving me 75% of that. But the Mercantile Illusion, I really shouldn't have to tell you why this is overpowered. With my economy now practically inhaling a constant stream of unspecified growth hormones, and my researchers working day and night to literally force other nations to wage war against one another, I felt that it was appropriate to start a recruitment of a secondary army. Seeing as how our objectives were even more spread out than the occasional times where you decide to use deodorant, it would really help to distribute multiple armies around the world. Anywho, I was now ready to begin my war against nature itself, starting with the man of the hour, Orion the Treehugger. Now, it was almost as if he had been preparing for my arrival, since he had hunkered down inside a giant tree with a bunch of blonde dudes armed with an ungodly amount of pea shooters. Inspecting the auto-resolve left me quite surprised, but that didn't matter, because he was dead. And with his death came some enhanced tree sap, which, but more importantly, another trickster cultist. But this guy needed a turn to pack his cult gear, so in the meantime I tried out my new army led by Valmir the Black. His first victims was Aldous Morfen and his gang of soon-to-be Bone Meal, and apparently Valmir decided to win in such a one-sided manner that even the goddamn game stopped working. But when the game had calmed down and the next turn had begun, our newest cultist Oleg Valdorf was ready to move out. In the Darklands there is a certain settlement called Sarnagrund, and as you can see, it most certainly makes a pretty decent amount of money. I wonder what would happen with their income, and then our income, if I were to place a symbiotic cult in here. Well, gentlemen, as you can see, our income had just increased by a shit ton of times. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I think that's pretty good. Not only did I get very much richer, I also got very much thicker, as I had secretly been romancing Grom the Paunch, and we were now in a defensive alliance, meaning that I had fully obtained his identity rights. But just because a lot of things were going good, doesn't necessarily mean that everything was. I still had to murder a lot of wood elves, but I couldn't attack a tree every turn, because I had to spend at least one extra turn to replenish after every goddamn battle. Just before I almost started to hallucinate naked men jumping around in the nearby trees, shooting me with a million arrows, my mind was saved by a shiny green circle near Valbir's army. It turns out that if you click on this green circle, you can steal this weird looking crown from some poor goblin lunatic. It also turns out that this crown is what made him a lunatic. But after beating the previous owners into submission, I put this silver thing on Valmir's head. I read many green good looking numbers and ignored the fact that literally everyone would hate me even more than they already did, and well, since Valmir's greatest strength was everything except his intellect, I just hoped that a corrupted mind wouldn't hurt him that much. On turn 37, I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that someone had killed the Fecundalites, meaning that the grand scheme was now available in the Empire Theater. Now, it would seem that a bunch of Empire representatives were going to have a meeting/tea party to plan the construction of a potential underground highway. However, they were still waiting for the representatives from Altdorf to arrive. What they didn't know was that I had delayed the Altdorf lads just a tiny bit. My plan was to attack everyone present and then let the leaders run away. Now, these Malakas might have had something else to drink than just tea, judging by this interesting way they deployed their units. This might actually be the worst decision they could have possibly made, for obvious reasons. The only option the enemy had was just to charge their melee units straight into my wall of destruction. And while they were focused on brutally dying, I sent the changeling, Grom the Paunch, into the now undefended backline. But I made sure to not kill the leaders, because as I said, I needed them to survive so that they would report about Altdorf's supposed betrayal. Very nice. With the Empire scheme now completed, I got even more cultists to send out into the world. And because of this, it would be safe to say that money was no longer an issue. And so it was time to wipe out these annoying trees once and for all. And seeing how immensely rich I was, it wouldn't be that hard, would it? In total, it took me about 15 turns to deal with 4 giant plants. And during this time, I managed to do a lot of other things.
Fight Massa Hollywood, Swatch off and try out this Tron explosion thing, open a portal to the Badlands, start the construction of a chariot/tentacle monster factory, start a war against the Fat Man, start making a third army, somehow make Valmir's mind even more fucked up, turn 30 years old and get a wife and 2 kids, attack the Legion Master Gold, and redefy the laws of gravity by launching orc slaves into the air with the help of half horse, half demon things. Finally, these fucking trees were dealt with. Hooray! Jesus Christ. Anyways, the moment to fight the French Grand Scheme battle had now arrived, and my evil goal for this Grand Scheme was a lot simpler than the one for the Empire Scheme. I really just wanted to murder all of the French units and leave my newfound vampire buddies with a brand new undead army. However, that did not work out as planned. Besides setting some lonely peasants on fire along with taking out some range units that were harassing me, I might have sat back and waited until my vampire allies had all been wiped out. And of course, as soon as I decided to engage, karma struck me in the ass, because the Green Knight showed up out of nowhere, and it was not just him. With him, he had brought like 6 other units of ghost horses. I was not prepared for this, and my units also didn't seem to be prepared for this, because they started shooting fire into the sky. The only problem with this was that all of the enemies were on the ground. But after an intense round of ghost hunting, it was indeed over. Even though this concluded the short-term victory goals, not to mention letting me leave this cursed-ass forest, our goal to complete the ultimate scheme had not yet been achieved. Fighting these grand scheme battles was really just a preparation for the big final stand. And since we had beaten the shit out of the French while also making Reichland enemies of the Empire, none of these two factions were going to aid our opponents in the ultimate scheme battle. But at this point, it was still me against 4 entire armies. So to level out the playing field a bit, I sent 1 army to the Badlands to finish the schemes in that theater. And given the fact that the trees were no more, the changeling was also returning to home base. And because he was returning to home base, it wouldn't matter if I took some money from this orc Malaka to join his war that I wasn't gonna fight in anyways. It's not like the guys that I just agreed to fight were standing 2 micromillicentimeters away, right? It would seem like the changeling's army disappeared.
How crazy. However, considering that I am the great mastermind, there was obviously a spare army just waiting for this exact thing to happen. And I had also managed to open a new portal leading to the Cathay region. So, the changeling was now on his way to China. As the game progressed, some schemes were unintentionally done for me by other factions, like the one scheme regarding the Fecundalites, for example. This had also happened in Cathay, meaning that in order for me to fight the grand scheme battle over there, I only needed to execute 3 more schemes. The ones that intrigued me the most required me to 1. Infiltrate a settlement, 2. Corrupt the Cathayan government, 3/4. Steal either this Malacca's identity or this Malacca's identity. My plan was to infiltrate Nangao, and then get it to 75 corruption. This would be 2 schemes done already. Then it was just a matter of who I found first, either Snickich or Zhao Ming. The auto-resolve had apparently refilled on bullshit for the Battle of Nangao. However, that did not matter at all. You see, by giving the flamers a paint job, they apparently did more damage than normal flamers. After proving the auto-resolve wrong for the millionth time, it was time to corrupt the Senate. Meanwhile, there was another army recruited back in the Empire tasked with going to Russia, and Valmir the Black was busy in the Darklands hitting this fat man riding a wagon. The only thing left to do in the Badlands was to jump 1 of Grimgor Ironhide's lords, and also to win 15 battles versus the Ogre Kingdoms. This was actually a really important detail. It said Ogre Kingdoms, not Gold Tooth. So, in theory, I should be able to fight any Ogre Kingdom faction, and this should count towards the progress. I tested out my theory by attacking Scrag. Well, that just made this shit a lot easier. But before I managed to incapacitate enough ogres, the changeling found and caught the enlarged ninja rat. And after getting put on fire while also getting shot with pink stuff, Snickich ran away. Or he tried to at least. But Nakori!
Boom. Nice.
The Grand Scheme Battle, Cathay Edition, consisted of me and my new ally rat friend almost getting beaten the shit out of us. Mostly because both of my frontal lobes had disconnected from the rest of my brain. I don't really remember what the fuck happened in this battle, but I do remember shooting pink fire at air balloons and also watching a fake Nakari clone fight a living golden statue. To summarize this battle, imagine non-stop micromanaging everything for 10 minutes straight while being on the verge of death in real life. After this was finally over, there were still a couple of more schemes that needed scheming. I had started making progress in the Snowlands by attacking the Russians' largest cities, and also by sacking Hellpit. And I had finally managed to massacre enough of these goddamn ogres, so into the Darklands we go. Believe it or not, the reason behind this battle was to free the orc slaves from their short oppressors so that they could help me in the final battle. The strat for this battle was to hit the dwarves harder than they could hit me. It turns out this was incredibly efficient, and also because of our superior speed, we could easily break their lines and attack from the flanks. With the Badlands scheme now done, the lineup for the ultimate scheme battle was looking way better. And granted that the Norscan/Kislev Grand Scheme battle would supply me with Viking reinforcements, while also removing the Kislev reinforcements from my enemies, I was feeling more and more confident. Ta-da! It was time for the last Grand Scheme battle before the ultimate battle would commence. This one was weird. My goal was to hit the Norscans enough to then teleport them into Kislev. So I burned the Viking mammoths alive, hit Wulfric in the head, and whipped a shit ton of wolves. Then I teleported them all away. This somehow scared the Kislevites away and made the Vikings join me in the ultimate battle. Speaking of the ultimate battle, it was finally time for the ultimate battle. This time I wasn't gonna steal something as trivial as wealth or more land. My goal was to secretly plant my bare ass on the throne of Siege. In order to do this, I needed to perform another teleportation ritual. Luckily, I had some Malakas that were willing to help me. Pink Malaka 1, 2 and 3. This would obviously take some time, so I had to protect these little crazy bastards from all of these guys, because they really did not want me to sit on that throne. The enemies were coming from all over the place, and of course these teleporting wizards needed to walk around the active battlefield for some unspoken reason. Instead of just letting the horde minis come to us, we kinda just met in the middle. There were ground troops moving in through the center and the helicopters spawning on the right flank. Luckily, I had a unit of Doom Knights that were spawn killing these Malakas as soon as they got into the battlefield. My main force, however, was divided into 2 groups, which was indeed very helpful. About 3 minutes into the battle, my Viking friends as well as the orc slaves joined to help on the left flank, which had turned into some kind of skirmish. But since the Empire forces were mostly ranged, it was exceptionally ideal for us and not so much for them. There was a timer in the left corner of the screen which indicated when the wizards were done with their spell. It wasn't going down in seconds, so I didn't exactly know for how long I needed to wait, but since 6 minutes had passed and the timer had gone from 4000 to 1000, I prayed that they would be done soon. Mostly because Techlist the elf nerd had arrived on the right flank with a bunch of burning birds and a giant dragon, which wasn't looking so good. But after sending the rip-off Nakari to beat the shit out of him, he indeed got his shit beat out of him. Soon after that, the timer had reached 0, and I had finally done it. The throne was mine. Or so I thought. But of course, the god of schemes himself was actually the one trolling me. Shit. Hope you enjoyed this video. I know that I certainly enjoyed making it. Also, a big thanks to my YouTube members, and of course, thank you for watching. Later.